not quite dry on those contracts, so we will announce them very shortly. But there are 3 plus contracts to be added to that, which brings the total of Redflex contracts in the state of Ohio to about 15 or so. To our knowledge, 19 contracts exist in total for automated traffic enforcement in the state of Ohio. Now obviously not only are we very proud of that fact, that we own 15 of those contracts, but it's like, why? Why Redflex? Why are we the ones that consistently own and operate more contracts than anybody else? Here's Ohio contracts that are not with Redflex. They have some things in common, and I'll show you who they are in a minute. But it's not just that those contracts are not with Redflex. Every one of those other existing contracts, with the exception of one, which I'll name in a minute, has had faults and upheaval and disruptions to their service or their programs. Every single one have had a problem. The first one was Akron. Akron were a company and had, you know, by the way they tell it was a fairly successful program. They were not unhappy with how the program was running, but the company that owned their program went into receivership. So what does that mean for the city of Akron? Well, they either have to terminate the ordinance, because what happens when somebody goes into receivership, well, might they be bought out? Yeah, maybe they will. But who are they going to be bought out from? So now Akron was in a position of being a city that said, we don't know who's going to own our contract anymore. We don't have a relationship with them. We don't know who they are. So in terms of being unsettled and not being able to have any control over their programs, cities either kind of wait with bated breath to find out what will happen, or they have to terminate their ordinances to say we're no longer going to do automated enforcement in here, therefore the contract is absolved. So that was Akron. The next one is East Cleveland. Exactly the same proposition. And is it East Cleveland that considered terminating their ordinance? So that was their course of action rather than wait to see what happened here.
Lima did,
yeah, we're about to get to that. So poor Lima, and I say poor Lima because when you get into a program or a program of this type of magnitude and this type of public interest, regardless of the support you have within the community, you're always going to get noise. At the outset of any of these programs, you'll get noise. Just because people don't like A, they don't like change, and B, nobody likes to get a ticket. Okay, the press are obviously very interested in this subject matter and it's topical, so they'll report on a lot of what seems to be very disgruntled messages. It ain't always the case, and usually what we find is it dies down over a period of time where people just have an acceptance level. And any community that's been using automated enforcement for some period of time usually has very little noise in the background because people adopt it and take up an acceptance of it. So poor Lima went through quite a hefty process to get through to having automated enforcement put into their city. And no sooner had they gone live with their program, which is, you know, the most tricky part of any process, then the company went into receivership. And so, you know, they had council meeting after council meeting. What do we do? As far as I'm aware right now, they've finished with the program. So they had a lot of man hours put into it, a lot of city staff time, a lot of council meetings, readings with the public to get the acceptance, and then went through this process for maybe 8 to 12 months to find themselves just in the dark. You know, I think it was a sad state of affairs. I use Middletown here loosely, and the reason the asterisk there is actually they are no longer not a Redflex company contract. They are one of our contracts now. A little history behind Middletown. Can I name companies they are with? Okay. They had 2 vendors prior to Redflex coming in. So the first vendor they had, operation was quite successful by all intents and purposes, but again, the company went into receivership. This industry is fraught with mergers, acquisitions, receiverships, I mean, to the point where it's almost embarrassing and it's somewhat ugly. You need a lot of money behind you to be in this industry because the business model is risky. You know, a state makes a decision to take away automated enforcement. You don't have business in that state anymore. It's a risky business model and it's a costly one because the city never pays a dime towards the program. That's our cost to bear, it's our risk. Well, some companies just haven't got the United States business model working appropriately. So they've gone into receivership, and it's a scary proposition for those cities involved. So Middletown, happy with their program, the company goes into receivership. What do we do now? Let's go back out and find another vendor. Well, actually, that company then went into, the first company that went into receivership actually got bought out while they were considering other vendors. So it gets bought out. Well, their hands are tied now. They've stuck with a contract with a vendor they know nothing about. I know this on good authority because now we own the contract. What ended up happening is they had several of their intersections go dark. The company that took over, the company in receivership, didn't know how to handle the technology. It wasn't theirs. They didn't know how to operate it. The back office fell apart. They couldn't issue citations because they couldn't make it all gel and work together. So their intersections went dark. The program started to fail. In the meantime, Middletown are on the phone to this company saying, come out and fix our problem. You know what they said? Enter into a new agreement with us and a new contract, and we'll come out and put some people out on the street and help you out. Okay, so eventually Middletown got fed up, went back out to bid, invited Redflex in for a roundtable discussion. They said, okay, enough. You guys are the people we need. You're the biggest in the industry. You clearly know what you're doing in the state of Ohio. We want you. We need you now. We've had enough divorces. Let's get on with the program. So that is now up and running successfully. Okay, when you're in Ohio for as long as we've been, you don't be here without getting into the subtle nuances of really understanding how the state works. Where were the wobbles? What went wrong? How did we repair it? What's the state's feeling and tone towards automated traffic enforcement? So the key Ohio developments here are that House Bill 56 came very close to squashing federal enforcement in its entirety in the state of Ohio. It came very close. Our company worked with Brooker and Eckler law firm, which I think some of you here will be familiar with, and we worked tirelessly and we campaigned very hard to work and get the right messages to Governor Bob Taft, who listened to the cause, and at the very end he vetoed the whole decision. Said actually no, we're not going to disenable federal enforcement in this state. Mendenhall versus Akron, if I was to go back to the slide just one before, you'll note that Akron's not one of our contracts. We didn't even own that contract, and yet we knew that Mr. Mendenhall was going to be attacking the city of Akron to say that the cameras are not constitutional and they're violating my rights. Well, we knew if he was successful in that claim, that would bring down the whole state of Ohio. Now, bearing in mind, when you have 10, 12, 13 contracts and you're working with communities, they're kind of looking to you. They're like, Redflex, help us out here. What's going on? You know? Please don't let this happen. Don't let the state turn the decision around, because we've seen very good success in our community. We don't want it to go away. So we worked very hard with the City of Akron, with Brooker and Eckler law firm, and what happened is by a 7-0 ruling, the Supreme Court said, no, actually they are constitutional. Cameras are constitutional. House Bill 30 kind of gives what we refer to as tacit enabling legislation. So it's neither a big fat yes nor is it a no. It just says, you know, if you choose to use automated enforcement in your community because of home rule authority, here's how we'd like you to see it play out. City of Dayton versus G. Daniels. Nobody likes to be taken to court, and we're no exception to that. In this example, though, fortunately the end result works so well that we now have judicial notice. G. Daniels took us to court. Thank you. G. Daniels took us to court to say that you know, we don't trust the accuracy and the reliability of your system because it was speed related. Well, actually, we had expert witnesses go in. We proved that, in fact, they are accurate, and we now have judicial notice. So our technology cannot be challenged by the public. Public safety impacts. This is Chicago. They're the largest program in the whole of the United States. And this is the evidence over a 4-year period that says this does work. And it is about public safety, because here's the crash information. Toledo, Dayton, and Columbus, some of the biggest programs we have here, and that's their documented evidence there. The 101 loop we went to head-to-head trials. When you're sitting here doing these kind of presentations with people, invariably at some point you get overwhelmed with information and you say, you know what, we had 2 really good presentations. I think we learned a lot here, we learned a lot here. It's kind of a wash. Sometimes it's really hard to get your message across. When all is said and done, whomever you choose to put your contract with, the proof is in the pudding when the polls go in the ground. Because then everything that I've said during this presentation will either be supported or it will not be. Now, a couple of really big cities, Corpus Christi, Texas, Austin, Texas, and City of Chicago, made us, during the bid process, said you absolutely have to go put your poles in the ground. When we say start, run the program. When we say stop, stop, and we're going to do an evaluation. Redflex has never lost in a head-to-head trial. Never. In our demonstration, we were awarded 20 points. Here, there's a pilot program. So the pilot program, they wanted timeliness of the installation, customer service and response times, technology hardware, the